Hi, welcome to another episode of TakChek or PekChek.
I'm Wayren.
I'm Nicholas.
And together we are an education lifestyle podcast where each week we decide a topic to discuss, and at the end of the podcast we decide whether or not it is TakChek, which is
Interesting,
or PekChek,
which is frustrating.
Okay, so for today, I understand that we are a little bit late for this, but for our Sec 2s going on to Sec 3s, they have by now, most of the students decided on their subject combinations already. So I, as mentioned, I think we are a little bit late for this because most of you already chose your subject combination. I don't know whether whatever we'll be discussing for today will come a little bit too late for you guys to make a decision. But for today we are going to be sharing our views on what makes the ideal subject combination, and you can decide at the end of this whether or not you have regretted your current choices or not.
Regretted is a stronger. I think it might be a bit too late, like what you mentioned, but I think that most schools, they will have their streaming results out around end November or maybe third week of November.
Yes.
And I think there's a little bit of a respite cooling for them to get into reconciliation with the combinations that's given to them. And
they can launch their appeals, right?
The appeals. So maybe this could still be a little bit more applicable to you.
We understand that some of our listeners might be parents who are first time going through this. If let's say you have any recollection of what your secondary school days are like, okay, that's good, but some of our listeners with our parents may not remember. So let's just run through again what are the differences moving up from lower secondary to upper secondary. Okay, so maybe we talk about math first. Okay, so as usual, lower sec math was one subject. Now when you go up to upper sec, it will be split into 3 different subjects, of which you must take 2. So we have E-Math, which is compulsory, as well as A-Math, as well as Principle of Accounts. Now, typically, the A-Math stream is offered to those students who tend to do a little bit better for math, whereas POA is offered to those students who are a little bit weaker for math. But everybody at the end of the day must take E-Math. Okay. Nicholas, maybe you want to go into the sciences part?
Alright, so for sciences itself, in secondary 1 and 2, we have this moniker, just science itself. And that itself will mean that there are 3 of the major sciences, chem, bio, and physics, all mixed into one. So just a little bit of a grievance here is that I think that as a tuition teacher, we often have to grapple very hard with the Sec 1, Sec 2 science syllabus because different schools move at different pacing, and even for the same subject, the depth is a little bit different.
Yes.
Now, but fortunately, once they proceed over to upper secondary 3 and 4, they have a common goal, and in this case here, that is to go for the O-levels.
O-levels, yeah.
And within the O-levels itself, the sciences are now chopped up a little bit more detailed. We're going to have chemistry, biology, as well as physics, of which chem, bio, and physics all have 2 variants, the combined variant as well as the pure variant. So I think variant is very much similar to what you mentioned for E-Math and A-Math, whereby if a student caliber in science is slightly above average, they will have a chance to practice it at the pure level rather than at the combined level.
So what does pure mean versus combined?
Okay, so I don't want to sound like I want to be too pure and too semantic about it, but pure and combined, if we just distillate it towards its essence itself, it's really just the topics that is being taught in pure is going to be 100% of the syllabus. But for combined, we're looking at discount. I think later on we'll talk more about the discount and why some of the subjects, if you practice it in pure, it seems a bit better, a more bang for buck than in combined. And on top of the topics that is being discounted in combined, you are also looking at the depth of questions during examination. Alright, we'll talk more about that in detail, but in short, there is going to be less thinking involved, but there's much more straight up delivery that can usually be attributed to the students' understanding of the chapter and also to a certain degree of memorization. If they can memorize, they can properly deliver.
Yeah. So just to add on, pure sciences, essentially we, as Nicholas had mentioned, we study 100% of the subject and essentially we get 1 O-level grade. So this contributes to 1 score for your one contributing subject for your O-level L1R5 or L1 B4. And this is only offered to G3 students. Whereas combined science, you choose 2 sciences and then each of these will be combined. The reason why they call it combined is because they will be combined together into one single grade. Right?
So something that two of us are not the subject matter expert over here is going to be in terms of humanities. So we're going to speak a bit more about humanities itself. So humanities for Singaporeans or in all secondary schools, social study or SS is
compulsory.
Is compulsory.
Yes.
All right. So many a times for social studies, I think the rubric for how to answer for social studies, most I heard from my students is that they're broken down to different levels of answering. All right, so if you want to hit the top marks itself, you need to be able to hit like level 5. So we're not the expert in that, but again, we can tell you that social studies is a must-have, and it's usually accompanied. This time around, you have a choice of history, we have geography, and we have literature. So this itself for humanities also have the combined variant as well. All right, so social study is one part of the combined, which you can combine. For humanities speak, they don't use the word combine, they use elect. All right, so you can go for SS with elect geog, SS with elect history, or SS with elect lit. Then of course there's the pure variant, which is pure lit, pure geog, as well as pure geography. But SS still have to be taken regardless whether you're doing pure or combined from there.
So on top of that, there are all these other fringe subjects, slightly more specialized subjects that will be offered depending on the school. Traditionally, when we were in secondary school, I believe quite a number of schools offer what we call the AEP, the Art Elective Program, as well as the Music Elective Program, where they take art and music as O-level subjects. And additionally, of course, there are more language-based ones like Chinese literature.
C-Lit, right?
Yes, C-Lit. And my school used to offer D&T at O-levels. And nowadays, I understand that I think computing and economics is also being offered at the O-level standard. Right? So these all contribute to one additional grade for your computation of your R1, R5 at the end of your O-levels.
So before we jump into our next segment, which is on our ideal subject combination, maybe we're based off mathematics. Could you maybe share with us E-Math and A-Math, like what are some of the common topics that most students usually they get slaughtered at? Some of the tougher topics itself.
Okay, so usually students will tend to say E-Math is easier than A-Math.
E-Math is easier than A-Math.
Students will tend to say that E-Math is easier than A-Math, right? But I agree to a certain extent, but I also disagree. I think A-Math is harder to understand because it's more abstract. But E-Math, I feel that the questions will tend to go from level 0 all the way to level 1. So the thing about E-Math is that you have to think about it as a continuation, a natural continuation from lower secondary, but they just retest you all the lower sec concepts. On top of that, they test you extra stuff like trigonometry, vectors, matrices.
And that's in E-Math.
And that's E-Math.
Okay.
Whereas A-Math is a completely brand new subject. You're learning new things and new ways to do math. So if you're talking about topics, right, for E-Math, I believe vectors is one topic that typically students tend to do a little bit poorer at. But apart from that, and sometimes I think some students, if they're not taught well, the trigo questions can get a little bit challenging as well. But I feel that is not the true difficulty of E-Math. The true difficulty of E-Math, right, there will sometimes be this kind of application question where they will literally throw in a ton of information. They'll say that, if I want to travel on a taxi, then the meter fare is so and so. Every kilometer they'll be charged how much. Every 20 minutes of waiting or 10 minutes of waiting, you'll be charged how much. Then if I want to go from Tampines to Marina Bay Sands versus I want to go from Tampines to I don't know where, which one is more expensive? So there'll be these kind of application questions, but there's a ton of information. That is the true difficulty.
And that's E-Math.
That is E-Math.
Okay. So will they be handicapped if their language, their understanding of the question, they can't suss out the info?
If they don't have an eye for detail on which on what information to draw upon, then they may very well get the question wrong.
Okay.
A-math, on the other hand, I mean, there are certain topics which are a little bit more, students will tend to fare a little bit poorer. I think, once again, trigonometry, there are some integration parts which are not great.
Okay.
That students tend to be a little bit poorer at. But I feel that for A-math, it is easier than E-math in the sense that the learning curve is steeper. Understanding is a little bit more difficult because it's more abstract, but the questions are more or less always the same.
So there is
you can prepare,
a parameter that there's a question typing you can identify for A-math.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
it is
if you grind it out, should be okay.
Yes, you can. It's grindable. It's more grindable.
But E-math, you need a bit of an aptitude.
Yes. E-math is easier to wing it, but if the teacher wants to be mean, they can be super duper mean.
Okay. So you see, like E-math and A-math, they have a very clear cut between the elementary math and the additional math. But for sciences itself, there's the pure and the combined variant. So just now I did mention that for the sciences itself, some of the sciences, maybe you can take us on the physics part later. There are some sciences that if you were to go for the combined version, it is word for word a bit more bohua because you spend like the same amount of time, but again, the combined nature of science means that you need to average it out with another of your combined science itself from there. So for chemistry itself, I think probably you have dabbled in chemistry before. For the combined students, they have this one chapter that's being removed, which I feel is a good enough reason for them to do combined if they're being offered. You want to make a guess what's that chapter?
Electrolysis, is it?
Yes, it's electrolysis. All right, so electrolysis, because I mean this is not really a topical kind of discussion, but electrolysis is a giant mega topic whereby if your fundamentals in Sec 3, we're talking about things like mole concept, redox, your salt preparation is being poor, the whole chapter itself just collapses because those are like the foundation of the chapter itself. And for pure sciences itself, there's also another one which is macromolecules, which is under polymerization and plastic.
The condensation polymerization. If I'm not wrong, combined chemistry they do polymerization, but not the condensation. Yeah.
Right. So I often tell students, and I think this is something we want to discuss later, that doing combined, which I think that you came from a combined background, right?
Yes. Yeah,
actually, he made it to masters in physics. So combined has no real life indication of how far you go. I wanted to say that, if you are learning some additional things like condensation, polymerization, there's no inclination of its usage in JC because it's not in the syllabus at all. So some students might think that if I'm doing combined and there are some topics that are being discounted, that the bridging process in JC will be a little bit difficult, which might not really stand true.
Yeah. It is, so you were talking from a chemistry perspective. So you mentioned how many percent of the pure syllabus is the combined? Like 70,
I would believe around
80?
70% of the pure syllabus is in combined, but that is excluding the fact that the depth of questioning in combined is going to be much more shallow.
So same thing for physics actually. Physics is mostly around 80%.
Okay.
Mostly around 80%. So I used to have a chemistry teacher that would tell me like, us as combined students, right, we are on the losing end of the stick because we study 80%, 75% of the chapter, 75% of physics, 75% of chemistry. Combined together, you put in 150% effort, then you only get one grade. Versus the pure students, they put in 200% effort, they get 2 grades. Right? So, this is how my chemistry teacher used to.
But would you say that the 75% of the combined, which is I think part of the pure syllabus, the discount, was it a significant, like the 25% that you did not have to study for combined physics, was it a significant discount when you compare to your pure physics peers?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so because it's just from at the end of the day, like force diagram, you still have to learn how to draw. Like the content that you have to study is going to be the same. I think the only key difference where it comes from is during the exam prep period, where I think a combined student will feel a little bit more relaxed, a little more stress-free because the questions are simply simpler.
Okay.
Right? It's just apply the formula. Okay, the way they ask you is a bit more direct. But at the end of the day, when it comes to knowing the content, understanding,
it is still the same amount of effort.
It's still the same amount of effort.
I will take it the last for the biology portion over here. That for biology itself, the combined bio student actually have, I will for now say that I feel that the combined bio have a significant discount. Yeah, because over here we're looking at chapters like cell division. Not sure if you have seen me teaching cell division, but it's plenty of circles, plenty of mathematics, plenty of counting chromosomes, which is very intricate. You need to be really good at microscopy for you to understand different stages. That itself, usually for the center, we spend close to 2 months to teach. It is a mega chapter itself. So that is being eliminated in combined. And another one is the chapter of excretion. All right, kidney, urine formation, all that's being removed as well. So biology itself, I feel that taking away some of these chapters plays an overall very big role in the discount, because biology is a very synergistic subject. So you take away a couple of it, a few inter-topics question will not exist. You will not exist in the pure bio form, and that will mean in the combined bio paper, and that will mean that the kind of questions that you can expect, the level of thinking that you can expect in the combined bio paper is significantly lesser from there. All right, and same thing, I want to say the same thing, excretion is no longer in H2 biology. All right, so again, for the combined students who think that you're being handicapped because you don't have this excretion chapter, you are perfectly fine itself from there.
So one feedback that I keep getting from parents, right, is especially for those students from Sec 4 going to JC, they always ask me, Mr. Teo, my child did combined physics or combined chemistry or combined whatever, like, is my child handicapped? They think that just because their child did combined sciences at the secondary school level, they are unable to perform well for JC. But I will usually assure the parent that it's okay. It's okay, because assuming that they study the combined science well, they are on equal footing, almost equal footing
as
a pure science student, because again, whatever you learn in O levels, be it combined or be it pure, you're just scratching the surface compared to what you'll be learning in JC. So the JC syllabus is way much more in-depth and way harder. So at the end of the day, everybody starts off on roughly an equal footing. It's just that maybe some topics with some prerequisites, I take physics for example, let's say we have, pressure. The topic of pressure, I think there's this particular formula that you study in pure science, the combined science students don't have it. This is assumed knowledge in JC physics, but just because you don't have it doesn't mean you can't just learn it on the spot. Right? Small things.
Am I wrong to say that even though you're practicing at a combined, and I'm again using you as a perfect example over here, as we grow up, our mental capacity will eventually expand. Which actually means that if you're doing combined, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't catch up well enough. You know, I want to use this analogy over here, I hope it's applicable, is that from the bio perspective itself, if let's say, it's a fun fact for everyone, if a mother is pregnant with one embryo, so that will come up to be one fetus. All right, let's say the fetus size is 3 kg itself. But biologically itself, nature is actually very marvelous, and I want to use this as the mental capacity part, is because if the mother is pregnant with twin, whether is it identical, whether is it non-identical twin, both the fetus will be slightly smaller, because I mean the womb has a limited size. But statistically it has shown that by the age of 1 year old, you can't tell whether was this child part of a twin, because the twin will have an accelerated growth rate. So that itself, coming back to the combined part, so yeah, you might be assigned to a combined syllabus, but again, I feel that when everyone reaches a certain mental capacity, the propensity to expand, I think, is just going to be there. You don't need to think that doing combined, and I think the message in this podcast is to want to let everyone know that combined and pure, there's no first class, second class citizen, and I think this is a very important message to talk about. All right, so with that in mind, with all of this being introduced on the nuance on pure science, combined science, mathematics, E-math and A-math and POA, let's talk about your ideal subject mix.
Okay, so usually after a certain point, maybe after the WA2 for my Sec 2 students, I always have the talk with my Sec 2 students.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
eventually the parents also, right? You will want to
Yes. Usually, I will give the parents a call to tell them like, oh, okay, yes, what your child has to decide on what subject makes. Okay, so I will usually have the talk, and the talk is what I feel is my best ideal subject combination. Okay, so now I am basing this off entrance to JC, which requires 6 subjects from your O levels.
L1 R5.
The L1 R5. Okay, so since it's the most stringent, then if let's say you want to go to poly, then of course
L1 B4.
L1 B4, so you have to take only 5 subjects, which is less stringent. Okay, so we have one English, which must be computed into an L1. The L is the L1.
That's the L.
Is the L1.
Yeah, that's the L.
Okay, so L1 is compulsory, and your humanities is compulsory. Just now we were talking about combined humanities. Okay, so you either have to take the combined humanity or the pure humanity. So either one.
So just again
Either
to
one.
clarify, the combined humanities will be social study SS with an elect job, elect history, or elect lit.
Yes,
That's combined.
And or you can decide to choose
A pure-
one like your pure lit, your pure history, your pure geography. Okay. Then after that, what I will suggest for your 6 subjects, right? English and humanities down already. So you are left with 4 subjects. My recommendation to my students is usually you take double math as well as a double pure science combination. Because you do double math, of which must be E and A math. Cannot be like, if I will usually tell my students, like, if you can take A math, if you meet the criteria for your school to go and do A math, even if you just barely meet the criteria or barely fail the criteria,
Do it.
like please appeal to at least try. Okay, because A math is something which I think is the concepts that you learn in A math, like logarithms, exponentials, calculus. So all of these are things that really springboard you to go and do science at even higher levels. And even if let's say you decide to do social science or business, there's some statistics component which is involved, which requires concepts that you learn from A math. So I highly recommend that most students out there do A math. Okay, so I mean, of course, I cannot say that I have much experience with POA, but I do believe that POA is a very highly specialized subject, which I think at a later point, if you do decide to go and do accounting or business, you'll be offered modules on it. So it's something that you can catch up. The concepts from accounting, you can catch up at a later point. But A math is something which, if you can train from young, please train from young, right? So double math, okay, as well as your double science. So some students, they'll always be faced with this. For those very, very intelligent students, they are offered triple science. Triple science. And I will usually tell them, like, don't take triple science. I will discourage them from taking triple science because once you use up your double science already, right, you have all 6 subjects filled up already. There is no space for this one extra science, right? So if let's say you have the option to do, of course you still have your mother tongue. So for some schools, they offer students and the option to do one additional subject, right? I'll recommend that the student do another humanities.
As a backup.
As a backup. Because humanities, as opposed to science, right? If you get B3 for your prelims, chances are you won't stray too far. Maybe you'll do better for your O levels or slightly worse. Yeah. So your score will usually remain around there. But for humanities, I give example. When I was in secondary school, I did what was that? Combined humanities. My combined humanities was SS and geography.
Elect job.
Right? And I did pure literature, and I love pure literature. Right? And if I recall correctly, I don't know if my school literature teacher is watching this. If I recall correctly, I never failed literature before.
Okay.
I never failed literature before. All my literature, maybe I don't think I got like A's, but I was always averaging around like B's.
Okay.
So For O levels, I got a D7
For pure lit?
for pure lit.
Wait, what was your prelim score for pure lit?
I cannot remember, but it wasn't a D7.
But okay.
It wasn't a D7. I think it was a B3 or B4 or something like that.
Okay.
But it's not a D7. So I never thought that I was a fail level.
But
for
when
my
you came
literature.
out of the exam hall thinking that you will be scoring that range? No.
No.
No? Okay. Wow.
No.
But
So I think at the end of the day, the thing about humanities is that the score, the variance for your score can vary a little bit more widely.
because it's still a very, will you say it's more objective or subjective? Should be more of a
It's more
subjective.
subjective. It's a little bit, of course, there's a large part of it which is objective, but at the end of the day, it depends on how the student writes, how the student, and how a student writes and performs on the actual day of the exam will vary, right? Like
Yeah, so
your
your-
writing flow.
Your whole year kind of a performance is not very indicative of your psyche when you're doing the paper sometimes, right?
Yes.
Oh, but D7 is a huge swing.
Yes. I was super disappointed, you know. I was super disappointed because I think there was a part of me that was considering like, okay, maybe if I make it to JC, I want to consider taking literature at the H2 level. Or last time they call it A level.
Yeah.
A level versus
and
AO level.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
So I was considering taking literature at the A level. But yeah, I think this completely ruined my chances already.
But would you have said that if you were given a chance to practice purely again, not knowing that you will get D7, you will still do it?
I will still do it.
Yeah. So I think this is
still do
a
it,
very important part when it comes to my ideal subject mix
Yes.
itself. Because for me, I was a triple science student. I did no life one. So I initially took triple science on the behest of my mother. My mother said you have to do triple science and that kind of thing. So I did it anyway. So my subject combination was trip science. I have A math, E math. I have SS with elect job, right? And there is Chinese, there's English. So it was these 8 subjects. Okay. So I recall itself in triple science, I absolutely detest physics. Absolutely detest physics. Okay, I did fairly well for physics for O level, but I absolutely detest physics.
Yeah.
For me, physics was just a grinding fest, just keep doing and everything. So this particular message, I hope that the listeners can share with your child, all right, if this is in time for the subject combi or for any kind of appeal, is that most of my students will be in the double science region. All right, they will either choose pure chem, pure physics, pure chem, or pure bio. So chem, we cannot escape from there. And I think chem itself is actually fundamental in JC, whether in the science faculty, you have to do chem. You can't escape from that.
JC, there are subject combinations without chemistry lah.
The weird hybrid.
The hybrid, like two humanities, one math and like physics or
Yes.
chemistry or bio.
But that I think will severely hinder the kind of choices of courses that is being offered.
Yes. For each science that you do not take, the number of courses that are open to you is less lah.
Less.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to it, I will always tell my student that you should try to have at least a bit of passion. So I think for a Sec 2 students, you ask them, what is your passion, bio or physics? I think if they can ever very indicatively tell you that, I enjoy physics, I enjoy bio, I think this is a blessing by itself, because go for that particular combination. Because whether it's in physics, whether it's in biology, if you were to choose it because you didn't like the other, I think you have heard me say this before, if you're choosing bio because you don't like physics or vice versa, you are going to have a very bad time in secondary school. So the reason here is because passion will fuel it. I'm going to use Wayren's example over here for lit. All right, I think maybe your Sec 2 lit teacher did a fantastic job to sort of like fan some passion in you, or was it like you just, okay, let's do literature.
No, I love to read.
You love to read?
Yeah, I used to love to read. So
for me itself was in Sec 2, my science teacher that is teaching all the 3 branches of sciences, she performed the best for biology. All right, when she teach, it was really engaging and all, and I think it really hooked me on that. And then that is why when I was offered a chance to do biology, I grabbed it. But I was a little bit fortunate. My school offered chem bio, chem physics, or trip science. And I know that some of the listeners out there, your child's school has a certain policy that if you want to do bio, it has to be trip science.
yes, my school was like that.
Was like that?
My school was like that. They didn't at that time. I think by now my school, which is Tanjong Katong, PM school.
Okay.
I must put it.
You must put it inside. Yeah, okay.
So for my school, I think at the time you want to do biology, you only the triple science classes, which
Can
is
practice biology.
Yes, I remember it was like 3A and 3B, which is the most atas, the smartest classes, right? So nobody had the chance to do a double bio.
So like I said, passion plays a huge part. Unless you are passionless about physics and bio, then I'll say, okay, let's just take one itself from there.
Yeah.
But chemistry, as we can hear, right, for science faculty, most of the mainstream science faculty in the JC part, I would say that chemistry plays a relatively big role. And Viren, you probably will lean more towards physics, not because you are teaching physics, but because of the courses that opens up quite widely, right? Maybe you want to walk us through that?
Okay, so I suppose now we are at the stage where we decide which science is better, is it? So because you have to choose two subjects.
Physics and bio. Let's duke it out a little bit more. Yep.
Chemistry is compulsory, so physics and bio lah. So one thing that I will advise most of my students is you of course I will tell all the students straight up, like, look, people, I'm biased. Do physics.
Oh, do physics, okay.
Do physics.
I might actually cite you on this part.
Yeah.
Okay, you go on.
Yeah, so the thing here is for physics, there are a number of reasons why you want to do physics. Okay, so for the number of courses that will open up to you in poly, in university, once you do physics, a whole bunch of engineering courses open up. Right, all the engineering courses open up. So I think we are looking at electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, right? Which all have prerequisites for physics. Now, the second thing is also between physics and biology, right? Physics requires less
memorization. I'm not going to fight you on that. I think that's
physics requires less memory work.
Yeah.
So funny story. I for us at TSA here, we have started our Sec 3 classes already. So I had a whole bunch of like maybe 8 physics students.
Okay.
And I asked all of them, like, why do you decide to do physics instead of bio? All of them unanimously said, because I don't like to memorize.
Because you don't memorize. Okay.
And I think this is a semi-misconception, because people usually think like, oh, okay, I do physics. Then
Don't need to memorize.
I don't need to memorize. I just calculate can already. But this is a misconception, because physics is 50% memory work, 50% calculation.
Okay.
So if you don't do well in either one of them, right, you're still gonna fail. Right? So but I think, of course, definitely compared to biology, there's much less memory work.
Yeah.
Right? So there is this advantage lah. If you don't like to memorize, you are fairly strong in terms of math. I think you can proceed to do fairly well for physics, and physics is something that can be grinded out, can actually be studied. And I don't think you need to have a super duper great passion for physics, because it's something that you can see all around you, right? So you can do fairly okay just without passion at physics. Like it's okay. But I think another very, very strong reason that I usually give to my students, and this one is something that must take with a little bit of pinch of salt. I remember during my time teaching in the schools, long time ago, MOE used to publish the national averages.
Okay.
The national averages for the different sciences.
Okay.
Physics, chemistry, bio. Of course, all the subjects lah. But I mean, for me, obviously, being
focus more on the sciences.
Focus more on the sciences. And when you look at the sciences, without fail, year after year, physics will consistently have the highest number of distinctions compared to chemistry as well as biology.
And just for the listener distinction, we are putting it at A1, A2. A1, A2 level. For
and we are looking like if I recall correctly, it's about 40+%. Like low 40s, maybe 41, 42%. Versus chemistry and biology, which we are looking at maybe 36% all the way to 30%.
But 40% is national.
This is
percentage.
The national average.
Oh, then I think that's quite remarkable.
Yeah. And when you look at I mean, for comparison, AMAF. AMAF and EMAF. I can't remember what the EMAF national average was, but I remember the AMAF one was about 50+%. So when you take AMAF, you look at the person next to you, right?
It's
Yeah,
probably-
one of us is going to get
A1, A2.
A1 or A2.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So this is the national average. But of course, I don't know whether or not, since the time MOE has stopped publishing the national averages, whether or not there has been any shifts in terms of the statistics. But I don't imagine that this is so, because the syllabus hasn't changed that much. Yeah. And I don't believe students have also changed all that much in terms of their intelligence.
16-year-old is still probably going to be like 16-year-old like
Yes.
our time.
Yes.
Alright, so okay, I don't know if biology has any. I'm not again trying to duke it out in terms of is bio better than physics, but I will just once again say again that for biology, if you were to choose to practice it, you must have passion. Alright, now passion doesn't have to be burning passion, but you must have at least a slight interest in the chapter, because as what Weiren has mentioned, memorization here is going to be around 80%. I'm not going to lie to you from that. Now, the only remaining 20%, I can be so upfront to tell you, the 20% are usually calculations that are based off calculating magnification from the microscope. So it's just fraction.
Yeah.
We're talking about percentages, we're talking about simple fraction, and that's it. That's really for the biology aspect for secondary school. Now, not really important for today, but if you were to ever head up to H2 biology, now that's where you need statistics involvement itself from that. So I think the E-math aspect and A-math, I think E-math has the stats part, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that will be instrumental. But for O-level case, Sec 3, Sec 4 case for biology, it has to be passion driven, and you must not be afraid of memorization, but in fact I'll say you have to embrace memorization. But I want to break a certain mold here in this podcast to let students know that memorization, as far as you're just going to hard force memorize content, it will get you only a max B3, B4 in O-level. Alright, I'm not sure does this apply for physics, but for biology itself, one of the common bane, I think most students, they move out from Sec 2 to Sec 3, they start to get hit by this thing called as database question, DBQ. So very similar to E-math, whereby you have to interpret the data, and we are looking at a lot of graph itself. You have to be able to marry what you have memorized with the data, and then you come to a conclusion that has been substantiated with a biological explanation to it. So, over at the tuition center over here, we try to expose students to all these DBQs, but it is non-exhaustive. I think that to the day that they go for exam, you have not seen all the questions out from there. And for biology, I will also want to tell students that, again, the passion part is important. Don't choose it because you don't like physics. That's why you take biology, all right? Unless you really don't have a choice from that. But be prepared to be embracing the whole fact that the topics actually link to each other. Just to give an example here, the first topic in secondary 3, we are looking at cells. Like just animal cells and plant cells. But the last topic in secondary 3, pure biology, is molecular genetics, which is on DNA and all. The first chapter and the last chapter are linked together. Yeah. So if you study biology in a very modular, very compartmentalized way, in those higher level order questions whereby you have to link topics together, you will get penalized for that. I'm not so sure about physics. Like
physics is very
modular, right?
Yeah.
Will I be expecting a force F equals to ma in a conduction, convection, radiation question?
No.
No.
There are some topics that are synergistic, but by and large, what you study in, say, forces, I think they remain
won't
well
see
within
it.
the realm of forces. I think, like if you study forces, I think there may be components of kinematics that will be added, that could be added in, but physics is quite modular. Even chemistry, because I used to teach chemistry as well. So even chemistry, I feel that the influences it draws upon, like from one chapter to another chapter, like say electrolysis, for example, it draws so heavily upon mole concept.
Yes,
redox.
Yes, extremely heavily from that.
And yeah, I think physics is unique in the sense that the topics are more or less standalone.
But you see, for chapters of a subject itself that draws from earlier chapters, there is both a good and a bad side to it. Because if you are fairly decent in the earlier chapters, your advanced chapters, you are more or less, you're studying in a good place.
Yeah.
So this is the thing I want to ask you. Like, would you say that physics and mathematics, the results are correlated to an extremely large extent that, we just want to, for people that's usually asking me, my math is good, I'm going to do physics. Do you think that is a right quick filter kind of a mentality to choose physics over biology?
So I have some students, at the end of the day, physics there is a certain level of intuition that you need, right? And there's a certain level of language processing that you also need that math doesn't specifically require.
Okay.
Right? For example, if we are talking about physics, you need to be able to imagine like, oh, okay, there's a car moving at 5 meters per second in this particular direction. Okay. So you must, in my head, I'm imagining a car and then an arrow indicating the velocity and things like that. So there has to be some level of intuition, and some students simply do not have that. Yeah, but math doesn't require this. So just because you do well in math doesn't necessarily mean that you will do well in physics.
But I can fairly say that if you don't do well in math, you won't do well in physics.
Will suffer.
Yes.
So if your math is terrible, your physics will also be terrible.
So maybe a TLDR for this important part here is that bio should be heavily driven by passion, and to not deter and hate memorization, but to embrace memorization is part of that.
Yes.
But for physics itself, a good mathematical foundation lends its assistance to physics. Does not really mean that it's a one-to-one correlation, but a poor mathematical foundation has an extremely linear correlation with your physics understanding. Okay, we hear that. So let's talk about something that is a little bit more something we talked about at the start, but I think this part is more on the stereotyping and possible stigmatization of students as doing combined science. So are they doomed if they're doing combined science?
I believe Nicholas mentioned before, I used to come from a combined science background. So Sec 2, I believe I play a lot. Okay. Then I didn't do that well for my Sec 2. So I managed to make it a little bit. I managed to last minute put a last ditch effort to somehow promote into Sec 3 and take A Math.
Okay.
Right? So I think that's what matters more. Okay. I personally feel that, like, as I had mentioned before, when you go and up into JC, there is no difference. Like, everybody starts off pretty much on the same footing. I think at the end of the day, combined science versus pure science is you're not doomed. Like, long story short. But what we did mention before is that you put in like 150% of the effort, you only get one grade. So this means that you are sort of disadvantaged in terms of like the L1 R5 aspect. But if let's say you are doing, for example, your 7 subjects, right? You're doing your 7 subjects, which is your combined science, your A Math, E Math, English, your mother tongue, as well as your combined humans. I think that you will have enough subjects to pull you through.
But I think just amplifying on your part is just a bit unfair in terms of the effort to you ratio. So I think that is, to me, the disadvantage of doing combined. But I wouldn't say you're necessarily doomed. I just want to add on this whole thing that I mentioned at the start, is that there are really topics that are not practiced in combined science, and you are not going to use it in H2 in the case of JC. But if you choose to go for poly, like I say, that your mental capacity will eventually increase, and how you pick something up when you're in your secondary school life versus how you pick something up when you're in your tertiary education, I think that the uptake, the absorbent is very much different, because your mind will have already expanded by then. You will have already been exposed to how you process data. You know how exactly to process data, and to pick up new things, I think it's going to be slightly easier itself from there. So again, a lot of students and a lot of the parents listening out here, in case you are going to talk to your child about that, if they are unfortunately being assigned combined, is that most schools that I know of, combined science are being offered instead of pure science, not because they did poorly in science in Sec 2 per se, but it's an overall score. So this is actually very, very important, because you could have been splendid in science, splendid in math, but your humans or your languages, you might have flunked it. And I know that in secondary school, schools will cycle between first half of the year, they're doing design and tech, and second half of the year, they're doing FCE, food and consumer education. And also, all these are things that will overall dilute or concentrate your scores as well. And it's just sometimes you're just a smidge away. I have students in my class, all right, this is this student that's quite dear to me. She is splendid in her secondary 2 sciences. All right, but because she didn't do well for her humanities, she's just 1% away. She got knocked down to combined science for Sec 3. And you can see that in class, she's still in my pure science classes. The way that she participates is like a pure level student. Then it's like you feel like this is very unfairly treated, which I hope that the ministry itself could perhaps step in with the more of like the PSLE kind, that you are overall given like a G2 grade, but because you did very well for PSLE science, right, you can practice at the G3 grade. You know what I mean for that. So I think the subject-based bending is going to be quite instrumental, in allowing students to realize their potential, not just based off an overall score, but based off their caliber in individual.
I believe the limitations, since you're on this, I do believe that the limitations from the school does result in quite a bit of frustration from both parents and students alike. I have students who have been, who just because their end of year exam, they didn't do well for math, but consistently for WA1, WA2, WA3, they were fine. But just because the EOY didn't do well, then they get shoehorned into what was that?
EMAF.
EMAF only, EMAF POA.
And also end of year weightage is usually heavier than all the individual WAs.
Yes.
So because of that, you have a very biased kind of an average, and that will shift them.
So I do believe that some schools also have limitations when it comes to the teachers that are available. So I believe for this particular student, also another one very dear to me, I've been teaching her math since like Sec 1. So what happened was, I believe her school had more POA teachers than AMF teachers. So they simply couldn't afford to have that many AMF students. So I think
it feels like a cowling exercise like that.
Yes,
so
yes, exactly.
Just so long you can't meet this card, sorry, I have to push you.
I do believe also that on some level, schools also have some agenda to push up their O-level scores. And if they want to push up their O-level scores, then obviously they have to be a little bit more cutthroat when it comes to the subject combination. So
but
this maybe a little bit controversial to say, but I do believe this is something that happens.
So after speaking about this whole whether is it good or bad to do combined sciences, let's take something a little bit more lighthearted. All right, shall we? So let's talk about fringe subjects as well as a weird combination itself. Okay, so let's start off first with fringe subject. You mentioned in TK there is this D and T as an O-level subject, right?
Yes.
Is there a good uptake of students who are taking?
Yes, actually. So I believe we have 2 classes which actually do back when I was in secondary school, we had 2 classes that did D&T. And D&T, of course, doesn't matter if whether or not you are academically smart or whether or not you're academically poor. I think, of course, I believe that there's some theory aspect, but at the end of the day,
it's very hands-on.
Your project is quite a large component of your O-level score. So I know that TK used to boast a very, very high distinction rate of 80 to 90%. Now I'm not so sure whether or not they still even offer D&T, but I don't believe they should have taken it out. I don't believe they should have taken it out, but I do believe that at the time, the distinction rate being super duper high gave students a lot of assurance that if I do D&T in this school, I'll be fine.
I'm almost assured like an A1
I'm
and
assured
A2.
that I'll get an A1 or an A2. Right? So this one I think is good, because this means that the school has relevant resources and relevant the training that the teachers can provide is sufficient for the student. But what happens if the school, like maybe it's a brand new cohort. Brand new cohort.
So like you become like the lab minds, right?
Yes.
They test it out with you first, and then they refine the techniques, right?
Yeah, and what if, let's say, your school doesn't boast a very high, fantastic distinction rate? So if let's say you want to go find tuition, it's not like chemistry or math, right? You want to go and find tuition, like it's everywhere.
Yeah, but D&T tuition
is super duper specialized. Or what was it? Computing tuition.
And we have economics that is more common at the JC level.
Yes.
But at the O level it's kind of like unheard of that there's tuition.
Yes. I think by now I think some A-level tutors probably
will dilute down to the O level.
Their O level, but still, this is going to be a little bit harder to find. as well as probably expensive. I don't know. Maybe
because of a very low supply,
low
but
supply.
a relative high demand.
yeah.
My concern with fringe subject is more on the practicality side of things. Is in the view of, if you compare to chem, biophysics, EMath and AMath, which are very established subjects that has been offered since I think more than 2 decades ago. If you're talking about things like economics, computing and all, I'm just afraid that there's not enough past year questions for practice purposes.
Yes.
And there isn't like a TYS tabulation for all these things, which means that your only source of practice, or the majority of your practice, are usually materials that's supplied by your school. Now, and if your school supply quality materials, good. But if your schools, it's a new thing that's being offered in the school, they might not have that much materials and all, then you are very much limited by what you can practice on. And I think that was very important. But I will say the same thing again. I'm not sure if any of the parents here, your kids are being offered fringe subject or they volunteered for fringe subject. But ultimately, I feel this is a little bit controversial that passion still triumph over practicality. If you like something a lot, again, bringing back to your literature kind of results from that, if you really like it a lot, I mean, passion is going to be much more sustainable for the long run. You won't feel so much of a grind because you're just enjoying doing it yourself from there. And who knows, not doing well, all right, but doing something that you like, I think doing something that you like is much more important to make this journey a little bit less torturous. I think that's important.
What about weird subject combinations?
Wow, I think this one you will definitely have heard of it. We're doing a combined chem and something and then a pure something. This is I call it the
pseudo triple science.
I call it the fake triple science. I think pseudo is just being nice because you're putting for 2 subjects you're putting 150% effort, and that's the combined part, and you get 1 singular grade. And then you have the pure subject, you're gonna put another 100% effort. You get total you grind 3 subjects to get two grades.
Just to let you know, my wife actually did this subject combination.
She's pure.
And I think she did pure combined physics chem, pure bio. If I recall correctly, I think it's combined physics chem and pure bio. My wife did this subject combination.
But
it is weird.
It's weird, but
Yeah,
okay.
but-
I mean, you have the added assurance of 1 more science as backup.
Yes.
Yeah, 1 more science as backup. But I just feel like if you're already at that triple science caliber, then why not just do double science instead?
Yes.
You get 2 guaranteed grades and you don't need to study 3 subjects. I feel from that. And for some JC itself, they are a bit more nitty-gritty in terms of the offering. So especially if, let's say, I'm using your wife example, combine chem and combine physics and pure bio. So let's say she do fairly decent in combined for pure bio, but let's say she did not do that well for the combined
science.
So when she go to JC, she might not be offered H2 biology because she practiced it at the combined level. Sorry, H2 physics because she practiced it at the combined level. But for biology, she might not did well enough to be able to undertake the H2 biology. But so I feel like you can do it because you just want to have a good weave and all of the syllabus and understand a little bit. But in terms of practicality, it's just so weird. I really feel it's very weird from there. I have students even weirder itself. This is very niche. They only have 1 pure science.
I think I never have students that.
And this pure science, let you know, is pure biology. There's no pure chem. So if you do well for pure biology, you get A1. There's no linkage to tertiary education in terms of JC because the pure chem you will get slaughtered. I mean the H2 chem you probably will get murdered inside from there because a lot of you need the basics
more concept and whatnot.
I think at this point of time now they are just having some random slots, pure biology, you just do it. So
is it a case where the student probably did 2 pure sciences and then they drop 1?
No, they are just offered pure, but then they do double pure
or triple math or something like that.
No, they do triple humanities. So you're talking at SS with an elect job, then pure lit and pure history.
Okay.
Very weird.
Very niche
weird.
And very
this is probably, I think the students probably is going to be pushed out towards the art stream.
Yes.
So I think, okay, you want a little bit of a science to balance out, I think it's fine. But if you're thinking of using that as a benchmark to jump into your H2 science faculty in JC, that I think this is going to be very paid. From there. The fake triple science, we heard about that. We have the singular pure science. And
I have students who were offered pure sciences, pure physics, pure chemistry, without AMath. And I mean, usually you do pure science. The idea here is you want to prepare yourself for the JC track, right?
Correct. And you need the AMAT for the H2 mathematics.
Yeah, and
right?
you do the pure science also because you most likely want to do the science stream in JC. But if you do the science stream in JC, you need the AMAT background.
You need the
AMAT background. There is so many prerequisite chapters like calculus, trigonometry that they assume you know already.
Yeah.
Which I personally feel that this is like, technically, yes, you still can go JC, but from a practical perspective, right? I think you are only destroying your own future if you don't do AMAT. If you have no AMAT background, then you try to go and do science at the JC level.
So after today's all this discussion, as we walk through with all of you, I think, Viren, what do you feel about today's discussion? Do you feel it's very interesting? Do you feel this is mildly frustrating? And let's answer this a little bit special. We think in terms of the perspective of the parents, and then we think in terms of the perspective of the student first. All right. So maybe you go for the perspective of the parents. If this is your child that is going from Sec 2 to Sec 3, do you think for the parents is PekChek or TakChek?
So from the perspective of a student, from a parent, right? I don't think that this is that PekChek lah. Because again, I have my own views, and I don't think my views will exclude my child from a lot of options, right? So for me personally, I will choose TakChek by elimination. Because this is not PekChek. Therefore I choose TakChek.
Okay, for me itself, because me and you, we are all educators, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we have this background knowledge. So for me, it's a very clear-cut TakChek because I know how to optimize.
Yes.
All right. The only slightly maybe a bit more towards the PekChek side is that what I think is optimal is not aligned with my child's passion.
Yeah.
What if my child wants to go for some weird combination of fringe subject? Then I want to practice where I'm preaching. Maybe I'll say that passion in this case here should direct my child. But at a 14 years old stage, maybe they are not so
keep
have
things
a clear,
general, right? Yeah.
Correct. Okay, so let's talk about in the student perspective. You're Sec 2 going to Sec 3. So now you're given all these choices. If you are fortunate, your scores is decent enough, you have plenty of choices lah. But what if you are not fortunate, your score wasn't decent, you have just a few choices? And will you think that with all these things we have mentioned to you, all this information given to you, will you feel that for students, is it more PekChek or TakChek?
I remember, again, because I was in this position, because as mentioned, my Sec 2 didn't do so well. I felt that it was very unfair for me to decide what my life path is going to be at 14 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, I felt very, very PekChek.
PekChek. Okay.
Because I didn't have very much options. As mentioned, I was only offered combined science. I think I was lucky enough that my school offered me like the AMAT as well as the double humans lah. Yeah. So but I did feel quite frustrated by this. So I feel as a student, from a student perspective, I would be quite PekChek.
PekChek. I'm totally on with you on this. I will feel very PekChek, especially if I did not meet the pure science offering just because I didn't do well in, let's say, humanities. Because it's a whole overall thing. So I still feel like the ability to practice science at a pure level, or the ability to do AMAT and EMAT, should still have a higher weightage in terms of how you do for this subject in Sec 2, rather than seeing it as a wholesome kind of overall score itself from there. And I hope this is not true, but if schools have own personal agenda to filter students to this and to that, and also to increase their school weightage and all, I feel like that will not be a very, very fair proposition for the kids, because I am just passionate for this, but just because I don't meet your narrative, I kena this particular cut from there. So yes, PekChek definitely for student lah. Yep. Okay. So we hope this podcast have shared with you some of the nuance between pure science, combined science, AMAT, EMAT. We won't claim to be the subject matter expert for humanities itself from there, but at least we have come to the conclusion that social study has to be taken regardless itself from there. Now do take note that today's conversation itself is on the O-level track. Alright, I think IP track is a totally new different ballgame.
Thing, yeah.
There are things like integrated math and integrated humanities. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. You can leave your comments and let's hear from you again. Alright, see you.
Thank you.